Good Erev Shabbos. Should be a Shabbos, please God, of bracha, Shabbos mevorchim, Shabbos of strength, Shabbos chazak, Shabbos of Vayakhel Pikudei as we finish the book of Exodus. And we should please get all of our ducks in order and all our details should fit in and fill out the larger picture. Me, 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 I, me, mine was a song by John Lennon. This concentration on oneself has become very much a modern mindset. We're trained and programmed to think just of ourselves. Ads push, get this for yourself, it'll make your life better. Go on vacation, you deserve it. All sorts of self-improvement literature out there. Sometimes maybe we need to not listen so much to what society tells us and think about others. The world isn't just about me, myself, and I. On the contrary, we're here to help one another. Just because I'm okay in my situation doesn't mean that I can just sort of relax and chill. It means that it's time to see how I can help somebody else get to the same. The Midrash relates that after the work of the Mishkan was completed, Moshe invited the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, to come and check the accounting, make sure he didn't steal anything. There had been thousands of shekels that were collected and thousands had been put to use. And he said, let's make sure that all the money was allocated appropriately and, both sides of the ledger match. All the Jews gathered around, says the Medrash, and Moshe started counting, doing the audit. And when he finished, he suddenly realized he was like 1,775 shekels short. The money had come in, I just couldn't remember where it had been spent. And he was getting really worried that they were going to be, having suspicions of his integrity. He checked everything in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, where things went, what was built, what was made. Finally, at that point, God enlightened him and drew his attention to the hidden tiny little hooks. The Vavim, like the letter Vav. The Vavim la'amudim, the things that held the Mishkan's pillars together. That's where he found the objects for which he had spent 1,775 shekels. That moment, says the Medrash, everybody was happy. What's so important about these little hooks? Why does it need to become a lesson in the Medrash? It would appear that perhaps the Medrash is trying to highlight the hooks or the links or whatever kind of hinge you want to call it, sometimes tiny, hidden, easily overlooked, these connections that connect one thing to another. Objects or people do not exist alone, only in connection with each other. The Hebrew language, the letter Vav means and, linking two objects to two people together. Adam was created on day number 6, which numerically, the gematria of 6 is Vav, Yom Vav, literally on the day of and. And remember, it wasn't good for him to be alone. In a real sense, all of us have to consider ourselves like the letter Vav, not standing alone, but being committed to me and, not only to oneself, but also to those who exist beyond and separate from themselves, whether we're talking about human beings, ben Adam lam Chaveroi, or we're talking about between man and God, ben Adam lam Makim. So Rabbi Jacob Schechter talks about how the Torah tells us that after Cain killed Hevel, and God made that mark of Cain on his forehead, you know what that mark was? Medrash tells us that it was the letter Vav. Why? I mean, there are 21 other letters he could have used. But the late Rabbi Meir Shapiro, the Rosh Yeshiva of Chachmei Lublin and the founder of the Daf Yomi program, explained that Cain, the person who was only concerned about himself, who could have the chutzpah to say to God, "Am I my brother's keeper?" had to be taught for the rest of his life the lesson of the letter Vav. He had to be constantly reminded that his concerns had to transcend himself alone. By virtue of having this particular letter emblazoned on his forehead, he needed to see himself as linked to others, He was his brother's keeper. Yes, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? Finally, the Ramah, in the writing about Reb Moshe Isserlis, in his teaching his halachas of the writing of Sefer Torah, points out that there's a custom to be careful to arrange that the columns in a Sefer Torah each begin with a word beginning with the letter Vav, to demonstrate that each column of the Torah doesn't stand alone. It's connected to that which preceded it. The beginning of every column in the Torah highlights the centrality of this idea of and. A friend in Australia, Asher Abetz, sent a fascinating little Torah insight. Dr. Yeshayahu Rubinstein, a molecular biologist in Macham Weizmann, doing research on human DNA cells, found something amazing, he says. He looked at DNA in the microscope, and they look like two springs spiraling around and attached to each other, and as long as the connection continues, the cell is alive. So he found that the entire DNA, they're all the way along, there are bridges that keep the spirals from detaching from each other, keeping the cells alive, keeping us alive. And he looked closer, he says, and he saw a pattern in these bridges. There were 10 acids, and then a bridge. 5 acids, and then a bridge. 6 acids, and then a bridge. 5 acids, and then a bridge. And this pattern kept repeating itself, and he tried to figure out what the pattern could be. Number 10, alphanumerically in Hebrew, gematria, is a yud. The number 5 is a hey. The number 6 is a vav, and the number 5, as we said, was a hey. A yud, and a hey, and a vav, and a hey. That's God's name. Much like an artist signs the picture of creation that he's drawn, the greatest artist of all, Hashem, leaves his signature on each cell in our bodies. Life is about bridges. It's about connection. It's about getting involved with others. You notice if you add another yud to the word li in Hebrew means to me, for me. But you add another yud, and suddenly becomes for God. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbos of empowerment, of blessing, and of getting involved.